I would argue many people couldn't pick Bari Weiss out of a lineup, and her bodyguards were running around that event like it was an action movie set. Like, it was ridiculous. They were running around like they were, one bloke looked like Wolverine. He was running around like he was Hugh Jackman.
Welcome to Ankler Agenda. I'm your host, Elaine Low, staff writer at The Ankler and author of Series Business, a weekly newsletter that covers everything insiders need to know about the TV industry. Make sure you listen to the end of today's episode. We've got a brand new edition of Rushfield's Rant, where the Ankler himself, Richard Rushfield, has more horrifying data points to make you feel just great about where the industry is headed. That's not an 8-minute standing ovation at Cannes you're hearing. That's the reaction to Zohran Mamdani becoming New York City's new mayor, the 34-year-old Democratic socialist who kept both local and cable TV news energized all through Election Day. There is nothing like an election to get people tuned back into TV news. I'm here today with Sean McNulty of The Wake Up and Natalie Jarvey of Like and Subscribe on the morning of Wednesday, November 5th. Were you guys watching the election results roll in on TV? Do you tune in on big days like this?
I was in the car, so I was like scrolling and refreshing my phone at stoplights, eagerly awaiting the news. And there's nothing like a clip of the streets of New York City that make me wish I was living in New York City on a big night like last night. That was really cool. I
was over here in New Jersey, so we had our own little election going on. There's outside of the one in New York for a mayor. We elected a governor, thank you very much, here in New Jersey. So, but yeah, I mean, I was watching the NBA and I was just looking at my phone. I don't know that I need to be watching television to really get the gist here in 2025.
Well, that's interesting. I also was not watching any TV news, and I think that speaks to the hold that TV news has or no longer has over a lot of the population, even, I guess, millennials and Gen Xers like ourselves. Speaking of TV news, we've got a special guest, Breaker Media co-founder Lachlan Cartwright, who will give us a peek under the hood of CBS News and the new and controversial leadership of Bari Weiss. Remember, she came on as editor-in-chief of the legacy news organization after David Ellison and Paramount bought her newsletter, The Free Press, for a reported $150 million in early October. Lachlan's been covering this and all things media in his newsletter Breaker. He's promised to tell us all about Bari's beefy bodyguards, say that 3 times fast, and help answer the question, what does the future of TV news hold? Lachlan, what is the energy in New York City today?
G'day, Elaine. Thanks for having me. It's good to be back on the Ankler Pod, Ankler Agenda. I was out and about last night, and the vibes were great after the result came in. And even just today, there's sort of this quiet optimism about the city. I just went up to Times Square for a press event at MS Now. I almost said MSNBC, and the flax would be right on me. MS Now. And there's this sort of quiet optimism. Last night I didn't get to watch it because I was getting Breaker out the door. And by the time Breaker was out and I had a bite to eat, the result was already in, but I made my way to a free press party in Chinatown. Yes, somehow I managed to get invited to a free press party, even after I've written everything about Bari Weiss. And the vibes there were electric. People were just, ecstatic. And I think that, I sat there and I watched his speech with, a bunch of people that really I didn't even know. And I think there was just this great, sense of excitement and jubilation. And, at one point I was stood very near Susie Weiss, who looked at me like, how the bloody hell did he get in? And I just gave her one of these, like a shrug, like, hey, I'm Breaker. I don't have the fedora on. I don't have the half a dozen beefy bodyguards like your sister, but I do make my way into certain private rooms when I can.
How did you get past all of those beefy bodyguards?
Well, the beefy bodyguards weren't there last night because Bari wasn't there, but the owner of the venue was a Breaker fan and invited me down. And I did find it funny that it was a free press event after having written extensively about, why is everyone fleeing the free press, and then having documented the trials and tribulations of Bari Weiss over the last few months. I did get a kick out of drinking the free press's free booze.
Top shelf, no doubt now, with all that money rolling around.
Yeah, it was pretty decent. Yeah, it was pretty decent. Yeah.
Nice.
And you said the vibe was pretty excited in that room. I'm curious, what was the response that you were hearing from friends of the free press?
Yeah, look, I think it was a pretty mixed crowd because it was free press and then it was all sort of friends of the venue. And I think there were some people there that were disappointed in the result. I definitely did speak to a couple of people that, voted for Cuomo. But I think for the most part, people were, pretty excited. And look, I think, we're in such a political climate that I think something like this, for me at least, it was the voter turnout, which for me was exciting to see how many people actually came out and voted. And then I made my way to one of my favorite watering holes in the city, Finale's, which is usually closed around 11:30 p.m. Midnight on a Tuesday. And it was packed. It was jam packed with people buying martinis. And it was a really fun vibe. And I think that there is this sort of sense of quite optimism about how this is going to go. And not just the result here, but also Virginia and Jersey.
Well, Sean, Lachlan, today you're both functioning as our East Coast correspondents. I'm curious what you think Mayor Mamdani means for the entertainment industry in New York City. He's pro-union, he's pro-labor, his wife is an artist. Sean, do you think this makes any kind of impact?
It's probably fine. I mean, the state tax credits are state tax credits, not NYC tax credits, so he doesn't really have a role to play in that. All the things you mentioned, he's not... the most curious thing, and the Ankle had a piece about this week, is, she reached out to their campaign. Do you have any comments about the film and TV industry? And she didn't get a comment back. Which you would think, one would give a boilerplate statement or something like that, which that's mildly curious. But again, his mother, of course, is a famous film director. So there's some speculation. Maybe he wants to kind of keep a little distance there. But yeah, I don't see I've gotten no indication, Elaine, at this point from anything I've seen that it will be anything other than business as usual at this point. But a lot of competition from New Jersey. That's obviously still looming there. That's probably the biggest factor. And the mayor of New York is really not going to change too much of that in that process.
I think it's worth noting that Mamdani really ran a campaign that was about working class New Yorkers, and who makes up a lot of the entertainment industry. It's working class people. It's the people working on film crews, and it's artists, which, we've pointed out that he has a lot of ties to artists in his own family. So I feel like people who, work in the entertainment industry in New York City right now should be feeling pretty excited about the opportunity to have someone like Mamdani, really advocating for them in City Hall.
Of course, as part of his proposals, there's an increased tax on millionaires, which Lachlan will affect you greatly. So,
the breaker bean counter has already been on the phone to me, Sean, and said this is going to absolutely wipe Breaker out. Look, there's been all these fear pieces being running in the New York Post. The millionaires are leaving New York, and they've already got their eyes on different real estate, and I say bollocks to that. New York is New York, and these people want to be here because it is the best city in the world. You've got sports, you've got restaurants, you've got action in every borough, in every neighborhood. And so, look, I doubt very much we're going to see an exodus of millionaires and billionaires. I think that's just a lot of a fear campaign that was running, particularly in the New York Post, to try and stop Mamdani, which is obviously being pushed by Cuomo and all the PACs that were backing him.
Lachlan, would love to hear what's happening in the hallways of CBS News, CNN, and the perhaps unfortunately renamed MS Now. Thanks for taking the time, Lachlan. Are people saying Ms. Now? Because that's how I hear it in my head when I see MS Now.
It's how I read it.
I see like a little Miss Pac-Man character.
I still can't pronounce the name of the parent company, which I keep pronouncing Versant. And I was called out on a podcast with Alex Sherman from CNBC, who just said, it's Versant. It's like, and
Versant, conversant. That's the thing. Yes. Forget croissant and think conversant.
For some reason, I keep saying Versant like it's a fashion label. So I can't even get that name right. Good luck to me with the MS Now. No, look, I think that as I broke it, they're spending $20 million bucks on a huge advertising campaign that they rolled out this week to get the public, their head around changing it over from MSNBC to MS Now. I think that's just going to happen, over time because people are so used to MSNBC. But I think it's going to take a while for the public to sort of tune in to the fact that it is MS Now, and it might help that they've got $20 million in ad spend to do that.
Yeah, consumers historically are pretty willing to forgive a terrible name. Remember we all laughed at Hulu back in the day, and now we don't even think twice about that name.
Remember Trump?
Yeah. Trump's not around around anymore. Some of them don't
That's not a good
last. Some of them
example.
do not
Tribune
last.
moved to Tronc. Do you remember
Yeah.
that? It was like, what
Briefly.
What are
Yes.
you people thinking? Like this is,
Yeah.
but I think MS Now is actually a bit more of a thoughtful name because they're keeping the MS part and the Now part, news, opinion, and I think it's world is the other part. You know, they can play with that. And look, it's going to really all come down to what's actually on air, their programming and what they do with all of this, building out their own news gathering apparatus, which is a huge endeavor. I was up there today and, was given a tour of the shiny new studios. Actually pretty impressive. I got to see this, crazy new LED type setup that they have. It was impressive. I was actually kind of really impressed by it. So, I think the name will just kind of merge into the background. It's really what we're going to see on the air.
The median age of the MSNBC viewer is something like 72. It's early 70s. Is that the biggest hurdle you think they're facing now with the new company? What are some of the challenges that they're going to have to overcome as MS Now?
Yeah, I think definitely that's one of them, and I think you've got that across the board. I think everyone is dealing with that. I think the fundamental challenge is that TV, it has changed dramatically and the landscape is being disrupted. I mean, YouTube is the new TV. Like even people my age, and I'm 43, none of really my mates own TVs. I have one here. It's full of Post-it notes of things that I need to yarns I need to chase for breaker. I haven't turned this thing on for months. And so I think they are fundamentally going to have to figure out to find the viewers where they are. And that is on platforms like YouTube, as we know, TikTok, etc., and to find programming that matches those new audiences as they try and find new audiences as the current audience is dying off. I think the other big challenge is this big news gathering apparatus that they're building out. They've always relied on the resources of NBC News for their news gathering. They've never had their own news gathering apparatus. So this is brand new. And last night was a big test for them. And from everything I gather, it actually went off without a hitch. But that is something to keep an eye on for the coming months, is how this news gathering apparatus is being built out, because they've always relied on correspondents like Richard Engel, who's out in the field in Ukraine. Now they're going to have to rely on Sky News. And they've done this deal with David Rhodes, who used to run CBS News, to rely on their international news gathering resources. But what happens if Sky has a corro in the field? It's a big breaking story. They just have one there and they want that person for Sky. And then MS is saying, hey, we need across the morning Joe. So what happens in situations like that? Like who will get, the corro in the field on those big jobs? That's still to be tested, as is a number of things with this situation. They've just moved into these new digs. They're calling them summer camp. I got there today and asked where the slip and slide was, because they're cutely calling this new place summer camp, as they find the permanent location, which they then will have to build out studios and other apparatuses to support their news gathering. But I got to say, I have been impressed, with how quickly they've moved to fill very senior positions, to, attract talent. And compared to some of the other places that I think we're going to talk about in this conversation, I feel that they're slightly maybe ahead.
And, with MS Now, you mentioned the separation of the news apparatus from NBC News. It means that we're going to be losing some familiar faces for the people who are tuning in now to MS Now. And I wonder what kind of impact that's going to have on their audience. But at the same time, I mean, maybe it's room for reinvigorating their audience and bringing in new and younger viewers. I'm thinking about what CNN was doing last night with its election live cast. Apparently they had a set that had like foosball tables and Papa Shop basketball, and they were trying to get in these younger viewers with this. It got poor reviews from The Guardian, but they're trying something.
Those younger viewers aren't tuning into CNN. I'm sorry. They were watching it via YouTube last night. So good luck to Mark Thompson. And I think these ideas are cute and they look nice in a press release, and when they feed them out to the reporters that they know will write their version of the story. But I don't think a foosball table or playing air hockey or whatever was going on last night is going to solve the existential crisis that they're facing.
No, absolutely not. I mean, I just did a story last week about newsfluencers on TikTok and YouTube and Substack. And one of the main takeaways, I heard from people is that, young people just kind of want young people to give them the news. So they don't need foosball tables. They just need someone that they feel like represents them on screen. So maybe they could just start by hiring some young, exciting, fresh faces to help, actually report out and deliver the news.
100%, Natalie. The most eye-opening thing that happened last night was I was at a YouTube creator event at YouTube's HQ over on the West Side Highway with about 15 other YouTube creators. And the Breaker Pod is on YouTube, and we rotate to different downtown venues, mostly downtown, sometime around town venues with different guests. So, they're helping us grow the pod. And I was speaking to some of these creators, and to your point, Natalie, yeah, they do want to hear from people of their age, of their ilk, of their background. And none of them brought up CNN to me last night. None of them brought up MS Now. None of them talked to me about CBS and the Free Press. They were all talking to me about what's going on in YouTube and what they're creating. And it was utterly fascinating to me. And obviously I was probably one of the oldest people there. I think my producer Ryan is a couple of years older than me. But for me, it was just totally eye-opening. And it's a different world to the worlds when I go to these things with Mark Thompson or Rebecca Cutler and I think that they're just kind of getting their heads around, wow, that this is, a different world is going on out here with people under the age of, 30.
Remember, we rewind this back a little bit, and Lachlan, I don't know if you were in the country or not, but at the time, but 20 years ago, Anderson Cooper was the young, fresh face of CNN.
Right.
Lisa Ling, these names, and they're still around. And it's like there hasn't been
Lisa
this new
Ling
generation.
just got laid off.
She got laid off. Well, that's only the first time I've heard her name in a while. She got laid off from CBS News. But I was like,
sorry,
oh, yeah.
Lisa. Sorry, Lisa.
No apologies to Lisa Ling. But but there was this era back when that Al Gore News Network that he launched.
Right. I remember that.
There was that era 20 years ago where there's now that enthusiasm that we experienced, when we were back in my 30s. Now it's all that now is this YouTube thing you're talking about and that Natalie's talking about. But the mindset of people who still maybe work in this business who are 50, 60, 70 years old, it's like, this is where this is at. Remember that excitement that we had 20 years ago? This is where this all is now. And you got to be there to take advantage of find this audience.
100%. And I meet these agents. I interact with some of these agents.
Oh, yeah.
And they're still talking about deals that they're doing with the networks. And I'm like, what are you doing? You're repping your clients. You're not doing a good job because you're not spending enough time where I am at YouTube or with Beehive or with some of these sort of newer upstarts. And I just look at some of these agents. I was like, are you realizing that you're going to be extinct like the dinosaurs if you keep up, this attitude? Some agents' mindsets are changing. I have to give them some credit for
hustle. The money's not as easy, Lachlan. It's not
exactly.
one deal. It's not one contract for $5 million, and that's
100% sure. But they are going to be extinct if they don't adjust to this new world order, adapt, and that is where people are watching content and getting their news, and it is not off of some of these other legacy networks that we're talking about.
Well, who are these new faces? Like Natalie, who are the news influencers anybody under 30 is watching online?
Yeah, there's a number of big ones on TikTok. Aaron Parnas in particular has captured a huge audience. He's interesting. He's, pretty young. He has, political background. His dad was a Rudy Giuliani crony back in the day, and he's had to kind of separate himself from his dad's reputation and his dad's politics. He's also a former lawyer. He's a lawyer. So he does not have your kind of quote unquote traditional news training or upbringing, but he's posting TikToks, 10 times a day where he's, kind of summarizing the news, explaining what's important, talking about it in ways where he can really kind of capture the stakes. And people really want that from their news anchors now, whether they're news anchors on TikTok or on CNN. I also talked to V. Spahar, who has Under the Desk News, which is really popular. And they were telling me that they found that their audience really wants a couple of things. They want the news. They also want comfort sometimes in times when things are tough. They want to be comforted and, their hands kind of held through the tougher news. And now they also really want to know how to take action. So they don't just want to be told, here's what's happening in the world, but here's how you can respond to that. And I think those are things that are really hard for mainstream media companies to deliver to consumers, because they're very used to, we're going to tell it to you straight. We're going to give you, both sides of the story, and then you figure out what to do with this information. And the people who are really succeeding on YouTube and TikTok and other platforms are, also, giving people action items and helping them kind of process and understand, what to do in the world that we're currently living in.
I think they also want authenticity. They want voices and people that are authentic, and they're not made up, and they're not sitting behind an anchor desk, and they're not like David Muir, who does this thing which is really awkward. I'm trying to do right now, but I don't want a back injury, and sits there at the desk like he's like a Lego man. It's like they don't want that. They want authenticity, and I think that is a big thing that you're seeing. That was definitely a theme at this event last night I was at with YouTube.
Natalie, I wonder, what does comfort look like when it's coming from a Gen Z news creator? Like, I think about sort of the comfort that people get from evening news anchors, Brokaw, Jennings, the kind of like deep, reassuring voice, but there's still, a level of buffer between them and the audience. I mean, like, how much of a deconstructing of traditional journalism values do you see in the new world?
I think a lot of times comfort comes from just stating what's actually happening in a way that people can understand. So, V, for example, told me that they're, comfortable just saying, it's weird that Trump is demolishing the East Wing of the White House. Like, let's not pretend like this is normal. This is unprecedented. Let's talk about it in those terms. V also gets down under their desk and reports the news under the desk, which is kind of a funny,
is it better
gimmick.
Down there?
But
I don't know.
No,
is the news
there's a torch,
Is the news better down there? I'm like, oh, this news is actually pretty good.
Well, they do a Thursday segment where they only talk about good news. They just say,
nice.
This is going to be the good news Thursday, which is, sometimes you kind of just
that
want
John
to be
Krasinski
able
show
to...
that came up in COVID that went away, that never heard from again. But yeah, people love that. Like, there is an appetite for that, Natalie.
Exactly, yeah. Sometimes you want to be able to turn on the TV or turn on your phone and find out what's happening in the world without worrying about, all the stuff that's going to keep you up at night. So, these influencers, news influencers are, they're not traditionally trained journalists. Oftentimes they're not breaking the news. They're, regurgitating the news.
Right.
They're explaining the news. So we have to think about them in a little bit different way than we would think about, someone on, an NBC nightly news broadcast. But, what they're doing is clearly working.
Yeah, but that's a really interesting point, Natalie. And Lachlan, like, there's two lines here. There's one explaining it, Natalie, or comforting or presenting it, but there's also breaking the news, which still largely falls to these, I'll say traditional media outlets. I mean, again, there's upstarts online and things like that, but there's still something, that global coverage you mentioned. The influencer's not flying to, Afghanistan on some breaking news thing. It's like, there's a thing to resources. There's a thing to,
and sourcing,
and sourcing.
It's
yeah.
The reason, Breaker has taken off is that I have 2 decades of sources, in the UK, here, LA, DC, New York. And so, that is the sort of the flip point on some of these news influencers is that, they don't have sort of the background or the training in the reporting and the sourcing and how you break news.
Yeah, I mean, this is all the more reason why it's so important that, mainstream media outlets like CNN, like MS Now, figure out how to survive in this new era, because all the people who are, explaining the news on TikTok need to get their news from somewhere too.
Yeah. Right. And Fox has been the one that's hustling. The irony, they're the ones who were actually the most active in the digital space. The MS, I'm curious if MS said anything about their digital initiatives. I mean, now they're at Versant, Lachlan. Not Versant. Get it out of your head, man. They're looking to grow their business. Then, it's not going to be in linear television. They're going to have to find these new investments. And, again, you should say early stages. We'll see what happens. It's not even a publicly split company yet. But CNN, launched D2C, which is great. Their streaming service, this month. But where's the investment in the off-channel, the digital spaces? And Fox has been, I'm not saying running circles around people, but Fox News has been doing a lot.
No, I mean, they kind of have been running circles around people. Now, Sean, have you paid your $6.99 for the CNN All Access membership? I'm told it's $41.99 if you sign up now for the year. True. It's an early discount. Get in now.
There you go. Get your promo code there, Elaine.
Well, speaking about the resources and training gap, I mean, I do think it's really interesting, Natalie, that like some of these newer creators are taking such a newfangled approach to it. But then you see what happens when you try to take a non-traditional approach in traditional news. And I think you look at what's happening at CBS News, and people have a lot of opinions about that. Lachlan, would love to hear what you have found out about, CBS's new leadership under Bari Weiss, who is somebody who has never had experience leading a broadcast newsroom or a newsroom this large, and comes from an opinion background and not a hard news background.
Yeah, as you can imagine, people at CBS News are lighting up my phone on a pretty much hourly basis. It's almost reminiscent to when Chris Lick joined CNN, the amount of tips I'm now getting out of that building, which just wasn't happening before. I think people right now are, very concerned about, the direction this is going in. She seems very much, as in Barry, seems very much determined to get big bookings. And so, she's there texting in meetings. I can get Jared Kushner. I can get Steve Witkoff. And look, great. Good on you. But they have a whole booking department at CBS that do that. And they have the same cell numbers. And in some cases, the same relationship. She joined as editor-in-chief, not chief booker. And so, she's bouncing around ideas in the meetings right after the heist at the Louvre. She suggested they get Dan Brown to interview, who obviously was the author of the Da Vinci Code, which obviously was a fictional book about a fictional murder at the Louvre 2 decades ago. So, bouncing ideas around like that. And, I think there was one about people who are, concerned about climate change, not having children. They're just kind of eye rolling at this point and just wondering where this is going. There's obviously this very weird reporting structure going on where you still have Tom Zabrowski, who really is kind of the news president. But he doesn't really report into Barry. He reports into Cheeks. And then you've George Cheeks, and then you've got Barry reporting into David Allison. Yeah. So that is sort of a very odd and messy structure that I think is going to be something that is going to cause real friction. You've also got Bari Weiss bringing in people like Charles Farrell, who was kind of pushed out of the Wall Street Journal as deputy editor after, as I reported, a very close working relationship with another very senior person at the Wall Street Journal who's now at CNN. And she did that without consulting Tom Zabrowski, I'm told, who was kind of blindsided by that maneuver. She's bringing in loyalists from the Free Press. She's put her sister, Susie Weiss, on TV. On the morning show. So there's just kind of these sort of odd early moves. And look, give it time. I'm all for one, give it time. If you had a look at Breaker Media when we first launched to where we are now, it's night and day. And I'm glad people did give us time to find our feet because, Sean's laughing, but, it is.
No, it's, if I look back on
the first edition, I look back where we're on now, it is really somewhat of a different product. So you've got to give it time to settle. But, when she's rolling around with 6 beefy bodyguards, as Breaker first reported with the photos.
That costs, what, $10,000 a day?
$10,000 a day as they are going through, periods of layoffs, which are quite, hurtful to obviously people who have been there for quite some time. People are asking sort of, does she need 6 bodyguards when she's going from a secure building, CBS News, to a secure event? I was there staking it out. Tony Blair was the keynote speaker. He rolled in with his entourage, which was equally of the same size as Barry's. Former Scotland Yard blokes, couldn't have been nicer, very kind of discreet. And that's the former PM of Britain, who is going to be potentially rebuilding Gaza. I would argue many people couldn't pick Bari Weiss out of a lineup, and her bodyguards were running around that event like it was an action movie set. Like it was ridiculous. They were running around like there were, one bloke looked like Wolverine. He was running around like he was Hugh Jackman. So, you've got to sort of ask yourself, like, is this all theater? Is it? And also what happens with the Free Press? Like, what is the integration with the Free Press and CBS News besides putting some people on the morning show to talk about Free Press stories? And then again, there's another, thought which is, to your point, Elaine, she doesn't have broadcast experience and she's not actually like an actual reporter. She's an opinion journalist. And, $150 million has been spent on this Substack. I would argue there are political motivations going on here. David Ellison is obviously bidding for WBD. And there is a thought here that, one way to signal to the administration that you're changing stuff up, you're reorientating CBS News, which has been a thorn in Donald Trump's side. And that's why 60 Minutes was sued over that Kamala Harris interview. One way you can signal to the administration that you're changing stuff up is by buying the Free Press. It was an acqui-hire. You're buying Bari Weiss.
And to what degree does that become a productive or counterproductive business decision for a Paramount Skydance when, if on the one hand it's meant for appeasement, but on the other, CBS by some accounts, Bari or not, had some problems going in. Whether Bari is the answer, I think, is the main question here.
Yeah, look, I think that, again, time will tell if this was a savvy and smart move by David Ellison. The early signals that we're seeing aren't that encouraging. But, we'll kind of get a better check, I think, sort of coming in to the new year if this was a good business decision. I mean, just on the business of it, the Free Press, and I've sort of done the reporting on this, I'm being generous, was probably doing 20 mil in rev, and you 3x the media business. And so, 60 mil. So they're grossly overpaid for this thing. And I just don't think it was a savvy investment. And the other thing is there were no other bidders for this. The Free Press were trying to sell for, some time. They brought in a bloke called Dennis Berman, a former Lazard banker, former Wall Street Journal editor. He was there behind the scenes trying to get this thing sold. And they just got very lucky with the timing and with David Ellison, and also David Ellison and Larry Ellison's close association with Benjamin Netanyahu. Israel is obviously a big thing for the Free Press. And I think, good on them. They managed to get $150 million out of David Ellison. We'll see if this is a good investment in the long term, or if it totally blows up CBS News. It is incredible fodder for Breaker. And I'm very lucky that season 2 of the Breaker season is Bari Weiss is very much a character, as is the 6 beefy bodyguards. And they were beefy. I don't care what New York Mag said. They wrote a whole piece questioning the beefiness of the bodyguards. And that reporter did not reach out to me. And if she did have, I would have given her a quote saying, "Beauty is in the eye of the beholder." If I had woken up in bed on Saturday with 5 of those beefy bodyguards, I would have been a happy man for life, a happy bloke forever.
Well, we would not distrust your reporting on the beefiness of her bodyguard, Lachlan.
Please do not.
You're the expert on beefiness here. It is pretty remarkable to envision a world in the future where David Ellison has been able to curry favor with the Trump administration to buy Warner Brothers Discovery, and then now combine a Free Press, a CBS News, and a CNN all under one roof.
And don't forget TikTok, the TikTok deal with his dad, Larry, involving also Lachlan Murdoch. I mean, that cinematic universe that is going on with the Ellisons is really a story of our time. Seriously. Well,
wait, Sean, put it in context for our listeners real quick, though. Like, how valuable is a CBS News to the overall Paramount Skydance institution? Like, how valuable is CNN to a Warner Brothers Discovery right now? Like, we've already seen MSNBC spun off with Versant.
Yeah, I mean, well, the two kind of different case uses. CNN is a cable network, and that is just a declining asset. It's been written about many times that, that revenue is going in one direction from cord cutting and advertiser defections, and the median age being 69 years old or whatever it is. So that's for Warner's, that's for them to figure that out. We'll see to this D2C streaming play if it brings in a decent amount of revenue or not. For CBS News, it gets a lot of headlines. And look, the Trump interview got, 14 million viewers on Sunday for 60 minutes.
Let in by the footy.
All right, but 14 million viewers is 14 million viewers, Lachlan. I understand. I wrote that today. 33 million.
They had an incredible lead in.
But being able to amass that large of an audience. Not everybody can do that at one time on a Sunday night. Like, you can get 20 million views over 4 weeks, but that's not the same thing as getting 14 million views in 1 hour on a Sunday. So there is still that power there, Elaine. But, the CBS Evening News is also being blown up, Lachlan, which you've written about as well. John Dickerson leaving, and what are they going to do with that? Their flagship property, outside of 60 Minutes, really. So a lot of questions there. But in terms of the overall revenue, it's not, what's going to make or break the earnings report, put it that way. And there is no insight given into the news department at any studio, that's ABC, CBS, anywhere. At Versant, we'll see more about MS Now, once they become a public company, because it is a much bigger part of that business. At Comcast, it's a pittance. So,
just on the CBS Evening News, you just brought that up. That's another thing. There would be these sort of strategic leaks that, she's in talks with Brett Baer and she's in talks with other people. Getting a big name, poaching a big name, a conservative host. Those people are locked up on deals that last through 2028, and Fox are very good at making sure their talent is locked down before the window comes up. So again, with that, it's kind of these sort of highfalutin ideas, but they're not realistic. And you're probably going to see like a Tony DeCopel or Nora Donald even be back behind the desk. And again, that goes to, I think, her naivety about how this industry works.
And none of that, too, none of the chatter that we're seeing in the headlines, I imagine, makes the average viewer or average consumer any more trusting in the mainstream media, which, according to the latest Gallup poll, it's already at a new low of 28%, down from 31% last year and like 40% 5 years ago.
Oh, but it doesn't help.
Yeah. I mean, look, I think all of the sort of the chatter about Bari Weiss, it's very much in this bubble, in this sort of industry bubble. So the punter in Milwaukee or in Arkansas or in South Dakota and any of these places isn't kind of buying into any of this, isn't really interacting with it, isn't reading it. But again, it's about what they're seeing on their screens. And the reboot of that evening news did not work. It wasn't well executed, and so they're going to have to come up with something new. Again, getting back to full circle where we started this conversation, to grab viewers that aren't watching TV. They're on YouTube.
Right. What's a win at the 6:30, half hour anyway? It's like those shifts are so slow and seismic. David Muir took years to get the share from Lester Holt. Lester Holt went to Tom Yama. It's just a very slow moving business as it is anyway. So again, it's important, but not necessarily going to move the needle on, oh my God, we have $100 million more revenue from drug ads at 6:30 on the evening news is not going to be a headline you see.
Well, we're going to have to check in with you another 6 months from now, Lachlan, to see what the status of Barry's beefy bodyguards is and the state of CBS News.
Yeah. If they double the entourage to 12 beefy bodyguards, do you know what that means? That WB deal is happening, and she's going to be running CNN and CBS.
I was going to say, it's a beefy dozen. What are you talking about? You have a name now. What are you talking about?
Oh, I love it, Sean. I love it.
You can have that.
I
That's
love
free
this as a barometer. We'll have to track the number of bodyguards she has as a barometer for where the deal is going.
If it increases, the deal is getting hotter.
Yeah.
We got the beefy bodyguard index.
Well, thank you so much, Lachlan. And now it's time for Rushfield's Rant. Here's what's on Richard's mind this week. All right, welcome back, Richard. I hear you have more depressing stats for me this week.
Yeah, I got more numbers. Well, last week I took a look at the state of female directors in Hollywood and found out it was really bad.
But this week you took a look at how many filmmakers who are people of color or come from marginalized communities have made major films this year, right?
Yeah, and even with the experience of last week, I kind of thought, well, it's a bit better. It's things have improved a bit because we've spent millions of hours of talking about this problem, as well as some high-profile successes like Sinners made me just assume it's still not good, but it's better and it's going in the right direction, which was a happy way to be until I looked at the actual numbers and found out that thus far, on the top 100 releases of this year, there have been 3 films directed by Black directors and 1 by a Latino director.
That's it?
Yep.
Well, one of those must be Sinners by Ryan Coogler, right?
You have Sinners, you have Captain America Brave New World, and you have And One of Them Days. Those are the 3. Elio had 3 directors. One of those 3 directors is Latino. So
Elio's doing a lot of heavy lifting here, isn't it? Because it's one of its co-directors is Domishi, who I remember you mentioned last week when we were talking about women directors, and she's also Asian Canadian. So so Elio's doing a lot of heavy lifting for the industry this year.
Maybe that's the solution Hollywood is going for. Just try to give everything 10 directors so they can cover all their bases in every single movie.
These numbers are wild to me because it definitely feels like things are getting better. How do you reconcile things feeling like they're getting better when you see enormous breakout hits over the last few years, like Get Out and Crazy Rich Asians and Sinners, and then square it with the numbers that we're seeing this year?
Yeah, it's very hard. But when people are scared, they retreat to their comfort zone. And for Hollywood, their comfort zone is big action tentpoles and maybe a horror movie or two made by a narrow band of white male directors from elite backgrounds, which represents probably 5% of the population. And the scarier it gets, the less tolerance for risk they have. Unfortunately, entertainment is about risk. Giving people the same thing over and over is the opposite of entertainment. Entertainment is about surprise, about novelty. And one easy way to get to that is by allowing different people to tell stories. And I kind of had thought that I guess that's why I hadn't looked at numbers, because I thought we all agreed to that. And it was what Hollywood seemed to be doing for a little bit, but not anymore.
Well, again, Hollywood, what are you going to do about it? Email us at podcast@theankler.com. These numbers could not be bleaker and could not be starker. And thank you as always for the time, Richard. And we look forward to your next weekly rant, which hopefully won't have numbers that are as grim.
Hopefully there'll be less math next time.
And that's a wrap on Ankler Agenda. Thanks for joining us. And if you liked today's episode, which I hope you did, leave us a rating and review wherever you get your podcasts from, and take our latest poll on Spotify. And of course, now that we are on video, don't forget to subscribe to us on YouTube at The Ankler. Feel free to email us too at podcast@theankler.com. We love to hear your feedback about how the new version of the show is going, any guests you'd like to see on, anything else you'd like to see us talk about. So thank you again to Richard Rushfield, Sean McNulty, Natalie Jarvey, and Lachlan Cartwright. I'm Elaine Low. We'll see you next week.